So, what happens when a religious movement gets branded as an enemy in its own home and then forced into exile? Do they just fade away? Or does all that pressure actually forge something entirely new? Well, that's the pretty fascinating transformation we're going to explore today.
Our source material kicks things off with this incredibly sharp question. It just cuts right through all the political noise to ask something really fundamental about justice. It's a question that's going to hang over this entire story.
And that brings us right to the heart of our explainer. Do these exiled movements just wither away under all that pressure? Or can that pressure, paradoxically, create something totally different? Let's find out.
Okay, so our first section introduces this core idea, a Calvinist moment. Now, just to be clear, this isn't about theology. It's about a really practical and frankly profound shift in how a group operates.
And here's the central paradox. In Turkey, the Gülen movement is basically seen as a criminal organization. You hear things like cult or parallel state. But for the tens of thousands of people who fled after 2016, what's taking shape in the West looks nothing like that caricature.
This is where you start to see a reformation, not of faith, but of practice. Being in exile forces this intense focus on a disciplined work ethic, on really integrating into new societies, and on a strategy of building institutions that last. This is what our source is calling that Calvinist moment.
All right, let's break that term down a little more. What exactly does Calvinist Islamicism even mean in this context?
So at its heart, it's a model of activism that really echoes the values that Max Weber famously linked to Protestantism. So instead of, say, revolutionary politics, the focus is on engaging with the world, building things, contributing to society, and doing it all in the service of your faith.
The core traits here are super concrete and practical. You see this huge emphasis on hard work, personal discipline, and especially education. This isn't just about personal piety. It's about building businesses, schools, and charities that are designed to last for generations to come.
And this slide brilliantly shows a key difference. The leadership style is principle-based, it's not driven by one personality. Legitimacy comes from shared values, and it's expressed through things like boards and councils, not from a single charismatic firebrand. It's all about building systems that can outlast any one person.
Now, to really get a grip on this, we've got to look back in history. There's this fascinating parallel that just makes the whole concept click. The story of the Huguenots.
Yeah. Over 300 years ago, France's Protestant minority, the Huguenots, they faced a really similar crisis. When King Louis XIV revoked their religious freedom, they were violently repressed, and hundreds of thousands had to flee the country.
This timeline just shows their remarkable journey. These were skilled artisans, traders, and intellectuals. And when they got to places like England and Prussia, they didn't just survive. They became economic powerhouses. They contributed massively to their new homelands. France's loss was absolutely its rival's gain.
So how'd they do it? Well, they built these incredibly robust institutions, churches, schools, aid funds. Their Calvinist theology framed work as a kind of divine calling, which drove them to excel. And their reputation for being law-abiding and well-governed made them really productive, trustworthy citizens in their new homes.
Okay, so let's bring that history full circle and connect it directly to what's happening today.
This slide right here is really the core of the whole comparison. Just look at these parallels. The accusations, strikingly similar, being a state within a state. The response, also the same, build valuable institutions. The strategy, prove your worth through skill and civic contribution. And that leadership style, it's collective and based on principles, not centered on one person. It's uncanny.
So the playbook is almost identical, just separated by a few centuries. The focus is on constructive engagement, right? In fields where they can excel and really show their value to the broader society, all while holding on to their community's identity. And, as the source points out, with the recent passing of the movement's founder, Fethullah Gülen, this shift from a charismatic leader to institutional leadership, well, it's become an absolute necessity. Now, its survival really depends entirely on the strength of its institutions and its shared principles. So let's wrap this up by asking the big question. What are the broader implications here? Why should we even be paying attention to this? Well, for Western societies, the implications are pretty significant. This model directly pushes back against harmful stereotypes. It offers a visible example of Muslims as productive, integrated members of the community who are building institutions that serve everybody. It just powerfully rewrites the story. And the long-term effect could be really profound.
This focus on education and service is cultivating a whole new generation of civically engaged Muslims who are entering key professions. They're becoming a potential backbone for leadership in their adopted countries.
You know, this could even create a kind of positive feedback loop. A successful diaspora inherently challenges the narrative of the regime that kicked them out, and over time, they could become a voice that advocates for the very principles like rule of law and pluralism that allowed them to thrive abroad in the first place.
Which leaves us with a final, really powerful irony. Could the very persecution that was designed to crush a movement inadvertently forge it into something more resilient, more integrated, and ultimately more reformist? It's a heck of a question to think about long after this explainer is over. Thanks for joining us.